Hey everybody, it's Dr. Boz. I am live again. Nice to see everyone. It's Sunday night, which is when I start my fasting, and we talk with Lachlyn on her journey of a ketogenic diet. Hi, I'm Dr. Boz. Welcome to my channel. And I am so thankful for the people that have joined me on this journey of not only a ketogenic diet, but helping educate people about the ketogenic diet, where it is impacting people, and how can we answer the questions for folks on a ketogenic diet. So I am getting a little better at this YouTube stuff. So I do have some slides that we're going to go through tonight. I am going to bring Lachlyn into the conversation in just a second. And we're going to get an update from her. And we have some labs that we were going to go through last week, but technology took me off track and I didn't do that. So I am going to I think this is going to bring Lachlyn in. There she is. Hi, Lachlyn. You are
Hi,
live. Nice to see you again. Welcome back to Sunday. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. And it looks like the YouTube world can hear you. So if there are problems with that, then hopefully Jack will text me and tell me what to do. All right, so
Okay.
we have a few things that we are going to go through that we were trying to do last week, but thanks to the technology issues that I struggled with, which I think we're doing a better job on, I'm going to do that this week. So before we get started on that, I have a few things. There are live comments going on, and we'll try to get to those at the end of this discussion. We'd love it if you have a few things that you could do in the comment section. First of all, I love to know if you've read the book. The book that I wrote is Any Way You Can and is my favorite teaching tool. It also, the sales of that book really help to support this channel and help to supplement the education. As I look at the different playlists that we have on this channel, I have one for beginners, but these conversations that I have with patients about a ketogenic diet, they are a lot easier and they make a lot more sense if you've actually read the book. So I am going to continue with the use of that book as I use it as a teaching tool. I refer to it. Several of the slides that I use on this channel, I'm referencing the book. So I just want to say, if you have read it, I look at all the Amazon book reviews. I'm a newbie author and I had no idea how much those Amazon book reviews are so important. So if you have read it, that's the best way for me to get your message is to watch what you say about the book on that Amazon book review. The second thing, though, is that Lachlyn is a type 1 diabetic, and she's been my patient for several years. She has been through the gamut as far as she was in her 30s when she was diagnosed. She's been through the several injections a day. Then we went to an insulin pump. Now we're back to saying that was a lot. And um, there's a whole backstory about how that sounds really easy, but it's not. Um, and so she is now doing a ketogenic diet, and this is week 6 for her. We've done a lot of education on the several other parts of this playlist. So if you haven't checked out those first few, I'm going to give you a brief summary of where we're at. The first week we did this, we just tried to take away her short acting insulin while we got her under 50 carbs. She did a little better than that and really was able to keep it between 20 and 30 carbs that first week. Then a really big stressful event happened in her life, so we didn't make any changes the next week, and we started using the supplement at that point, which is, I call them ketones in a can. This is beta hydroxybutyrate, which is what a ketone is as it floats around in your blood. We put that in the chemistry lab and we mix it with some salts, and it tastes terrible. So when you put it in a supplement, we put some stevia sugar. No, it tastes, Lachlyn's shaking her head that it doesn't taste terrible. It tastes really good when you have it with it tastes really good when you have it with heavy whipping cream and when you have the stevia with it. But the actual chemical of the ketone tastes really like acidic and really not, it's a salt, so it's very salty. But when you put it in these supplements, and she started using that twice a day, and we've seen not only how much it helped her brain focus, but about the second or third week, she really had appetite suppression and said, I've never skipped a meal as a type 1 diabetic. That can lead to this unpredictable sugar. So, but I feel like I shouldn't be eating this much. Is there any way I can eat less? And so we've gone to 2 meals a day. But this whole time, we've really been careful to say if there's one audience of people where supplements of beta hydroxybutyrate are really important, it would be somebody who is a type 1 diabetic who I'm going to gently say that her diabetes wasn't well controlled. And it's no fault. It's really a difficult thing to do when you're a type 1 diabetic for 10 years. And she's had several of the complications that we've had controlling her sugars. She's had a few lows that really took her out of a safety zone. And it was like less than ideal for her to process some of the next steps in a diabetic journey. But boy, we have a really great update this week. So we're going to start by saying hello again to Lachlyn. I just clicked back on the camera, so you're back online. I don't think you knew you were off, but
so I don't know what's going on. I'm just here and happy.
Yay! Well, thank you again. I just want to say I had several people reach out and say I just want to put words of encouragement for Lachlyn. You have been so inspiring to several patients who are type 2 diabetics, and they kind of manned up and said, boy, if she can do as good as she's doing, I'm doing a lot better job watching how she's doing. So I just want to say thank you. That's amazing how
you guys got this.
Right. So I'm going to start with sharing your vitamin D before we do your update. And I wanted to do that last week, but we kind of didn't get to it. So I know you won't be able to see this, but I am going to turn on some slides here. And this is showing Lachlyn her vitamin D, which she's already seen this, but for the world out there, I just put up this slide that says in March of 2017, her vitamin D was 30. Now that's on the edge of normal. 32 is what the textbooks say is normal. So when we see a vitamin D of 30, we'd say, oh, you probably should have a little more vitamin D, but it wasn't awful. When her labs just last week we spent the last section talking about cholesterol, and we said and her vitamin D came back very low. This would be 24, and as we look at some of the other things with a vitamin D story, I wanted to show how let's actually go to this one. This slide, one more, here we go. This slide, so we had her cholesterol come in, and I've always said to Lachlyn that she has the gift of some good genetics when it comes to cholesterol, because her cholesterol numbers have always been very good. And if you go back and look at the last video, they were good. Unfortunately, what we saw in her risk factors is that her inflammatory marker of a highly sensitive C-reactive protein shot up and caused me to have concern. It doubled from the last time we checked it. And I said, I bet with these low cholesterol, we're going to see your vitamin D is very low. And she's like, well, why would that be? I'm like, well, all of these hormones, the cholesterol hormone, the cortisol hormone, the testosterone, the vitamin D, the progesterone, and the estradiol are all related to fat-based hormones. And when I put patients on a ketogenic diet, the first thing they say is, isn't my cholesterol going to go up? And I will say, why, yes, it is, especially if you look at it in the first few weeks. Cholesterol is a fat molecule. It's what your fat looks like as it is in your bloodstream. But more importantly, the cholesterol is one of the feeding hormones. It's one of the hormones upstream, if you would, of all of these other things that make you feel good. From testosterone to vitamin D to progesterone, even cortisol, which we know as your stress hormone. It's excessive amounts of chronic cortisol can be cause fatigue, and they're associated with thinning of your skin, and your brain doesn't work very well. But cortisol should be able to peak and valley, and it can only do that when you have a strong, steady supply of fat. So on a ketogenic diet, I expect that Lachlyn's vitamin D should get better. But I wanted to use this opportunity to teach people about how much a a vitamin D teaches us. So that was her number at 24. I want you to keep that in mind as we go forward. So this is a list of the cholesterol or of the things that vitamin D is linked to. And even though Lachlyn can't see this, I'm going to read them out loud because I think it's so important when it comes to these hormones. So when looking at vitamin D is linked to low vitamin D, and again, hers is 24, is linked to colon cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer. She doesn't have to worry about that, but still very informative. It's linked to an increase in Alzheimer's, increased influenza. So when infections come around, more people are known to have a struggle with influenza and also obtain the symptoms when exposed to influenza when their vitamin D was lower. Tuberculosis is another one that this is a very wimpy infection or fungus, and your body shouldn't let it set up a home in your body. But along with that predictor that a low vitamin D was associated with poor immune systems, people ended up with tuberculosis more often when their vitamin D was low. So you can kind of relate that to this next one, which is general infections are related to a low vitamin D. Type 1 diabetes, which is what Lachlyn has, is related to a low vitamin D. So is type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome, which is what I think anybody overweight probably has but doesn't know. And we can argue about that a different day. But other things that low vitamin D increase is the risk of asthma. There is a huge correlation with multiple sclerosis, that the lower their vitamin D, the more likely they were to have MS. The rest of these, including heart disease, that was increased risk of heart attacks, chronic fatigue, high blood pressure, other autoimmune diseases, inflammatory markers. Again, when we did those blood tests for Lachlyn last week, her inflammatory marker had gone up as her vitamin D went down. It's increased low vitamin D is also associated with obesity, osteoporosis, and osteopenia. Okay, oh, that's a lot of stuff. But what I was right, and you look at the power of a vitamin D, and you know, Lachlyn, of all those that I listed, and I know that was a lot, but thank you for just letting me go through them. What do you remember that clicked in your head saying, "Oh, that would be me"?
Fatigue.
Yeah, right.
Inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm terrified to have a heart attack. That
Right.
doesn't sound good.
Right. So it's amazing to have all these infections or all these risks of vitamin D that go with. I know. I think influenza in our city has just been on the news, and you say,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, did you know that if you get, you know, if they when they put influenza in the nasal cavities of people, if they had low vitamin D, they were more likely to have the infection set up as symptomatic. Quite the problem that. It was amazing how much their their link to fevers was. I mean, you know, you look at symptoms of when people get influenza, it's when they really get symptomatic that I really spend time saying anything we could do to lower this. But all right, so we are going to go back to let's see. I have a couple other things I was going to show you. So I got to turn off Lachlyn. Okay, I don't know if you know this, Lachlyn, but you're not on air right now. Now you will be. So here's a couple things. When you look at how do you replace vitamin D, as I look at, I'm going to do this with Lachlyn. Lachlyn, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
In the past, when I've asked you to improve your vitamin D, what have we talked about? What did I do for your vitamin D?
We talked about supplements.
Right. Okay. Very good. And so I think I've even at one time wrote you a prescription for them, or maybe we always did it over the counter. I can't remember. Was it always over the counter?
I don't know. To be honest, okay. I don't know.
We've had a lot of prescriptions between the two of us. Yes, we have. So, but there is that. You can supplement vitamin D with a pill, or you can have the vitamin D associated with just over-the-counter things. So this is the here is one of the diagrams that I use to teach people about what does vitamin D do? And it really just kind of, it might be the mirror of what we just talked about a minute ago. So as you put vitamin D into our system, the sun really activates it into the active form, where it does all these really cool things. And one of the, let's actually use this picture. I think it's going to be better to see this. One of the biggest issues with vitamin D is how much people underestimate what it's doing. So vitamin D really is like an enzyme. And so it goes in and helps all these different parts of the body work. And I'm just going to go through these pictures because I think it really helps people understand. So this one just talks about how it's the breast cancer, colon cancer, prostate cells that it improves. Macrophages are the parts of your body that go in and help eat up those infections. That's where the tuberculosis and the influenza were both impacted. Again, your insulin secretion increases when your vitamin D decreases. That's how it increased the risk of diabetes. When we do those Dr. Boz ratios and they've had low vitamin D, I'm really adamant about saying if we don't fix that, you're never going to increase that Dr. Boz ratio. You're always going to be producing more insulin because that vitamin D is lower. And it has a lot to do with activating the vitamin D. When you look at vitamin D, it increases the absorption of the calcium and phosphate. It also mineralizes the bone, and that's where you end up with the association. Most people, when I say vitamin D, they say, oh, it's going to increase my risk. If I have low vitamin D, it's going to increase my risk of osteoporosis. I'm like, yep, that and so much more. So this one is just a picture of your heart, increasing the squeeze for what your heart can pump out that blood vessels. That's really a powerful part about what vitamin D does. This is just the picture of your parathyroid. And last is the vascular cells, which doesn't mean much to other people, but I've found an incredible difference in when patients have a vitamin D decrease, their heart disease risk increases quite quickly. So, all right, I have another quiz question for you, Lachlyn. What is the other way that you could decrease or increase your vitamin D?
Go tanning.
You are totally right.
I don't know if you guys can tell, but I've been tanning.
Yes, last week I actually educated her a little bit about this because I'm like, oh girl, this is really low, and I know we didn't talk about it on air, but it's really powerful. I'm going to show, hopefully, a picture here that is a picture of what happens to the sun rays. One of them is the United States. Here, this is the one I wanted. Okay, so this is a picture of the United States of America, and it just looks at, in November of 2018, so this is just this past year, what layers of the United States were at risk for not getting enough vitamin D. And as you look at this turquoise level here, that's where they were borderline enough exposure for vitamin D. And you say, if you look at South Dakota, which is where Lachlyn and I live, we are in the danger zone. And so is most of the country.
Literally, right now, we are in the danger zone.
We are in a danger zone, man. You know, you look at the other things that when it comes to, let's see if this one's, I think, a little bit better. Yeah, this was the other one by Harvard who said anything above this line in the United States shows these people are at increased risk for low vitamin D. So I know my YouTube audience is across the country, and I would love to know if you'll tell me a little bit about where you're from in these show notes. We'll get to those comments here in a little bit. But a powerful predictor of look at how much of America is above that line saying you are at risk for vitamin D. You know, they actually say that the people below this line, the doctors don't need to check it. Now, I don't know if I agree with that, but I'll tell you a couple of other things that there's a chart out there that talks about when people have this low of a vitamin D. And I think I can put this on here. Maybe not. Oh, that's not going to work. Okay, we're going to go back to this one. Sorry, guys. So if you look at the risk of vitamin D, and sunscreen, which I can tell you, I have 3 kids that I have put more sunscreen on than anything else. And honestly, they ended up with this problem of a increased risk for. I mean, I was so worried about skin cancer that I put layers and layers and layers of sunscreen on them. But also, I was very impressed at how much the sunscreens are blocked. And without this UVB, I don't know if you can see this. I'm trying to make it bigger. Oh, there we go. This is the one that I make it bigger. Oopsie, wrong button. So see that little ray there. So UVA rays and UVB rays are 2 different rays of sunshine that come through our atmosphere. The UVA rays are the ones that are increased risk of the melanoma. UVB rays are the ones that give you a sunburn, and that inflammation can be a risk factor. But UVB rays are needed for your vitamin D to activate and to be effective. If you supplement with vitamin D, you take in the activated form. But I will contend that the patients where I've seen the absolute reversal of the vitamin D problem have all been associated with getting an increased amount of sun exposure. So all right, Lachlyn, you're back on air, and I did something the other day that I thought my dad was going to fall off his chair. So my dad is 75 years old, and I think I've told you this. He's struggling with his kidney disease, and in that he has low vitamin D, like many other people, and he has so many medications that he's been on, and his absorption hasn't been great. So he started going to a tanning bed at 76 years old. And he looks at me like, have you lost your mind? It's almost like the same conversation that happens when I'm going to have you eat 80% fat and it's going to be healthy for you. And the first time you tell somebody that, you're like, no, 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 no. You've got to decrease the amount of carbohydrates to less than 20. And that high fat diet is going to increase your vitamin D, first of all, but it's also going to be increasing your inflammation problem. I mean, decreasing your inflammation. You're going to fight inflammation better with that high fat diet. Your immune system is going to be stronger. If you have autoimmune problems, they will decrease over time. And those are some of the side effects that happen with a ketogenic diet. But when I told my dad, over time on a ketogenic diet, you will see that the supply of high fat foods increase the fat soluble vitamins like vitamin D. And I will be very curious to see what your vitamin D looks like even in 4 months, especially if we can get some tanning bed. Now, the key to the tanning bed, do you remember what I made you ask the tanning bed person before you got in?
For UVB rays.
Yay! Yes, that's exactly right. And how was it? Did they know what it was?
Yeah, totally. She had the salon that I went to didn't specifically have that because they're building a brand new store across the street, which is supposed to open this week. But the one on the east side has it. But either way, there's a specific bed that is made to help people with vitamin D problems.
That is so great. Yeah, it's actually it's illegal for them, or against the rules for FDA, for them to advertise that it helps vitamin D. But you can go to the literature. If you look back on this YouTube video, you'll see some of the links that I sourced where this is the evidence for vitamin UVB rays, even in tanning beds, have been associated with an increase in vitamin D. The serum levels, the blood levels checked for those people using a tanning bed were highly correlated, and there are several studies showing that. But so when you think of a doctor recommending a tanning bed, what red flag goes off? What have you been told over the last 30 years about tanning beds, Lachlyn?
Skin cancer.
Yeah, right. Yeah, skin cancer. So the skin cancer is highly associated with UVA for the malignant melanoma, which is the really dark, scary black skin cancers. Those are not associated with UVBs. But the ones that make you burn are UVB rays. So how many minutes did you go the first time?
Like 7 or 8, something like
Yeah,
that.
I tell you, just go really low. We do not want to burn you. That's really not a good idea. We are trying to decrease your inflammation, and your body will respond if you give it a chance to. The melanin in your skin, which is what makes you brown. Well, we are from the butt white land. We are all white up here, and we don't have any sun that, if you looked at back at that map, it really doesn't give us a chance to expose our skin. And from that, our melanin just kind of fades away until it gets stimulated with UVB rays. And then the melanin comes up to protect the DNA that's in each of our cells. So I think it's a very interesting to study. When you look at the brown part of that cell, it will always stay between the person and the sunlight. So even if you turn over in the tanning bed, the DNA the melanin will rotate over on the other side of the DNA to protect the DNA and shadow the sunlight from that that DNA string, which is, I think that's awesome. Now, if you burn, it means you're asking your skin to do too much protection too quickly. So that's why starting out with 7 or 8 minutes, if you do that 2 or 3 times and don't have a burn, and you can get up to 10 minutes, 10 minutes 3 times a week is a very good dose when it looks to UVB rays. My dad says it takes him longer to get his clothes off and in that thing than it does to actually lay in it. But so that was the lesson I wanted to go through tonight. I think vitamin D is something that's highly linked in the conversations that happen with a ketogenic diet. It's one of the fat-soluble vitamins, and it is so important for healthy living. So I'm all about a ketogenic diet, but I'm first and foremost a physician that takes care of lots of patients. So in this situation with Lachlyn as my patient, her low vitamin D gives me the opportunity to teach all of you about how you should go check your vitamin D. There's plenty of labs out there where you don't need a doctor's prescription to go check the lab. And specifically, you'll want to check something called the 25 hydroxy vitamin D. So that's 25 hydroxy vitamin D. And that should be, in my book, that should be above 50. There's another slide in here that I thought I put in, but I can't find it, which shows if you look at what Lachlyn is protected for at the number of 24, essentially, she's protected against rickets, which is like really bad bone disease. But if she got her vitamin D above 50, she would have protection against breast cancer. She would have a protective factor against colon cancer. She would have a protective factor against weight loss and the energy problems. And there are several studies showing that it was the level of vitamin D and how high they got it that correlated with how much it could prevent some of these other problems. So we're going to get it up there.
All I'm saying is baseball season is going to be so much more fun for me this year.
All right, perfect. No
like
burning.
I'm always super worried about getting burned and like being in the sun too much. And now this year I'm just going to be like,
you're going to be a brown baby. Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Puerto Rican princess.
there you go. We'll take that. All right, so I've done plenty of the talking for the first 20 minutes or 30 minutes of this. I want to hear about your week. I've gotten a few texts throughout the week, but tell the folks about your week when it comes to sugars.
So you want me to just go through the week with like my numbers and kind of all what happened and all that good stuff?
Yeah, tell the story as you use the numbers, yeah.
Okay. Well, this week was one of those weeks that I guess I'm really grateful I have Annette. So if you're a type 1 out there trying to do this, like probably be contacting a doctor because it gets a little confusing sometimes. So last week, Monday, we did 50 units of Lantus in the morning. My blood sugar was 287 and the ketones were 0.5. Tuesday, yes. We did 50 units again. I was at, just kidding. Tuesday morning was the morning that I had no more Lantus in my pin. Yeah. And if anybody else is like me, I don't like refill a prescription until it's all out. So right. This is what I do every month. I run out of insulin and then I have to wait till I get off work to get it. So no insulin that morning. I was at 278 and my ketones were 0.7. So then I got off work, went and ran and got my insulin, took myself 50 units at night that night, woke up Wednesday, did another 50 because I forgot
right.
that I shouldn't double dose myself. Yeah. But again, interesting to me, like just having not that Lantus that one day, Wednesday morning, my blood sugar was 326.
Mm-hmm.
and point 0.5. And then Wednesday was the day that I went shopping with my friend for a quick second. And I had a super low at the
Super
store,
low.
and it was
Right.
zero fun, you guys. That was awful.
Mm.
So I'm going to do my little PSA announcement. Don't be like me and take your tester with you wherever you go.
Right. Because I'm like, how low was it? How low was it? And she's like, I don't know. I was too sick to do any of that. And
Right, right. When I got back home and took it, it was 87.
like,
So,
when's the last time you've seen an 87?
right. And so then Thursday morning, we decided to go back to 40 units of Lantus, and my blood sugar was 248, probably from a little bit residual chocolate milk from the low blood sugar
Right.
helping me out. And my ketones were 1.0. And then, interestingly enough, so through Thursday, I didn't really eat all day. And that was the day I texted you. Like, I felt like if I don't eat, I feel like I'm going to crash and then I'm going to have problems. And I did that yesterday, and ain't nobody got time for that 2 days in a row in their life.
Mm.
And that night, you guys, I took my blood sugar and I felt totally fine. I felt like it was the craziest moment of my life. My brother and sister-in-law were here, and I was jumping up and down in my kitchen because I was freaking out. I took my blood sugar, totally expecting it to at least be like over 130 because that's where I live. And it was 98.
That is a roof raising moment. Praise
And
God.
like
That is so cool.
I couldn't even believe it. Like I had the moment of like, this thing's broke because I'm not shaking like I should be. I haven't had a blood sugar that low and not be shaking for years. So
So
that was exciting.
here's a couple things that you'll have the answer for, that if they're, people don't, that you say the word Lantus, and people might
Oh,
not know that that's a long acting insulin. How long does Lantus last?
well, I learned this week that it lasts 12 hours.
24. 24.
24. My
Yeah.
bad. 24. So don't ever give it to yourself at 9 p.m. and then 7 a.m.
Right, right. There you go. That's the problem. So when you look at it, it is a breakthrough in medicine when it came out, because before these long-acting insulins, they would have to dose every time that their sugar was up, and the longest we had these insulins lasting was 2 to 3 hours. So now we've divided them into two different classes where there's short-acting and long-acting. And in fact, at the beginning of this ketogenic journey, we said to Lachlyn, I don't want you taking any short acting except in certain like episodes, like it gets really high, or we've got, a carb just happened to end up in your mouth, kind of. Right. Yeah. Right.
A cocktail. I mean, I
Yeah.
have kids.
Those.
Let's get real.
Exactly.
But I thought it was really interesting to me because for how many years have I done this little game of running out of Lantus
Mm-hmm.
and double dosing myself, and I never knew the effect of it until now.
Right. And
Because
it's totally telling, because your system has been so overloaded with insulin, so heavy with insulin, that it becomes resistant. Your body says, "Oh, she's type 1 and she is insulin resistant," which is what happens to every one of my diabetics, because we as the doctors do that. We don't talk to you about lowering your carbohydrates. We don't decrease that. And then we say, every time life gets hard and you eat some carbs, oh, yep, just be sure you can eat just normal, no problem. And then within 2, 3, 4 years, they are as insulin resistant as the type 2 diabetic. And boy, they put on the weight and they do not have the ability to get it off because we give them the insulin. And again, that locks down those fat cells. She can't lose the weight because we did that chemically. So in the end, when you look at the response to, it would be very interesting to know how low you got on when because by the time you'd eaten the sugar, it got back to the house, it was back up to 87. But that was like 45 minutes or at least, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
maybe even
It
longer.
was,
Who knows? Yeah, she had a friend with her, and that was a good
thank
friend
God.
who stayed with her while she wasn't doing well. This is a great testimony to say, why don't most type 1s do this? Because it's hard. And when it goes wrong, it's not just, I feel like I have brain fog and I fell off the wagon, like you'll hear type 2 or metabolic syndrome patients say. They are, no, I could have died. I really do feel badly, and if they don't have people around them that know what to do, it's a life shocker. Yeah. So
Yeah.
here's another thing. This past week, you went down to 2 meals a day most of the time, though, right? I mean,
Yep.
And have you, I mean, if I would take your average sugars, which we said, I think last week we said they were somewhere above 200, and we would take them down to 110, you would feel hypoglycemic. You would feel low blood sugars. So
Hmm.
I don't know if it will transmit to everybody listening that how much that makes a difference in seeing that. I mean, first of all, she was at 87 when she finally did check her blood sugar, and she's like, I actually feel okay. I'm at 87 and I feel okay. Now, what she did overshoot because of the chocolate milk and all the stuff that went with that bad moment. But the next day, when you were at the, what was it, 109
Uh,
or something like that?
129 the next
129.
morning,
Yeah, 129, still very good compared to where we've been. Had
and
we
felt
taken,
okay.
and you felt okay. That is
I
so
felt
powerful.
okay.
Hmm.
But then we backed off on the Lantus a little bit because the numbers were good. And then Saturday, it was back to 241. So
Hmm.
maybe 50 is where it's at for me for a little
For a
bit, and
little
I'm
bit,
okay
yeah.
with that.
Yeah. So the other question that you asked me, and that I chose not to answer until now, is, well, why in the world are my sugars so high?
I don't
And
think that's how I worded it,
yeah,
but
kind of. Yeah, maybe some more explicits, but we're trying to not have the little warning on our YouTube
that's right.
channel. We can control it. So yeah, when you look at, well, I only ate 20 carbs today. Where is all this sugar coming from? And the word is gluconeogenesis. Gluconeogenesis is a fancy word that says glucose that comes from a sugar that you don't make. And when you look at the glucose in the sugar that you don't make, it comes from the stored glucose that's in the muscle cells and in the liver. When I look at liver cells and muscle cells, they have pockets of this stored glucose called glycogen, and it is stuck there when they have high insulin. And so when you look at dropping your carbohydrates to 20 units or 20 grams or less per day, the other part that we do in Lachlyn's case is we took away that short-acting insulin, and we've slowly, I mean, we started out at 55 units of long-acting is where she started, and now she's down to between 45 and 50 units. We're kind of figuring that out. But that relative drop in the insulin allows that stored glucose to be released into her bloodstream. And she has never been able to do that, probably in the 10 years that she's been, I mean, unless her sugars get really low. But even when they get really low, if with as much insulin as she's been injecting, that glycogen gets stored. And when it's stored for a little bit, no problem. Your body is supposed to use it as a place to get energy. And when you don't take any carbs in, you're like, well, where is it all coming from? And it's coming from these stored vacuoles that are in your liver and in your muscle cells. When patients write in and say, Dr. Boz, why do you have the Dr. Boz ratio just checked in the morning? And I'm like, because then I want to know how well you emptied your liver. And like, I don't get that. And like, if you haven't, if that's really confusing to you, this is where I really push you to go check out this book any way you can. It is the teaching tool that I like the most. And it outlines why I care so much about your liver and what happens. But it is not only a teaching tool, it's a really good story, and it helps support this channel. So thank you for all of you that have purchased it, and I am even more thankful for the ones that have written the Amazon book reviews. In the bigger picture of Lachlyn's morning fasting blood sugars, though, she's like, how does it get to be 240? And all I think is, look at how many more vacuoles we opened, because in the setting of her 240, say a couple of your ketones for the last week, Lachlyn.
1.0, 0.9, 0.9, 0.5, 0.7.
Yes. I mean, those aren't like accidental ketones. Those ketones are absolutely, your body has been to ketosis, and that means that the insulin is low enough, and so is the ketone that has improvement in. So your ketones can't be made when the insulin has been super high. She's been injecting insulin, so her body is used to this certain level. That's what we call insulin resistant. As she starts to lower the insulin, that's when the ketones are able to be made. And as she drops the glucose, it signals to her body, hey, the glucose is not coming in through through her eating. We need to get it out of storage. And it's that gluconeogenesis, that ability to tap into the stored glucose, that not only is it a metabolic energy, that it's a way to we know she's going to be losing weight from this, but it also is her body's ability to get that out of storage. Because when we look at that cirrhosis of the liver, that non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which is NASH, N-A-S-H, this is a stiffened, hardened liver because of those vacuoles being there for years and years with the inflammation, because the insulin was high and the glucose never was able to lower enough because they kept dosing in those carbohydrates every couple of hours. So as much as you're frustrated with those morning fasting sugars, it is a slow, steady transition that is so important for your body to get used to this, and for us to gently take this one little step at a time, keeping the morning insulin always in the morning, never twice a day. So atta girl. Lesson learned. Yes.
Learned that 8 years into being a diabetic.
Yeah, right? Well, it's okay. And honestly, it's the same thing where when you look at patients and say, well, how could that happen? It's not that this wasn't, somewhere we've done this chapter before, but then you have been on them so long that you're just like, yep, this is just normal operating procedure for me. All right, well, I'm going to take a second here to see if I have comments over in this other section. Let's hope it's working. Oopsie daisy, I got to get that away from there. Oh, yay, look at all the comments. So I am going to take a few comments before I sign off, in hopes that I can read them. They're awfully small. Let's see here. Okay. So first of all, thank you for the ones that have typed in and said where you're from. And there's actually quite a few comments. So there's Martha writes in and says, that's so cool that a keto can help with diabetes in this way. Another one says, good evening. Please help the uncontrolled diabetic. I'm fasting for 72 hours and my blood sugars are still above 200. Any ideas how to lower these? Please and thank you. Again, that's similar to what I was just going through with Lachlyn, which is the gluconeogenesis, which is what your body is doing, is emptying all of these vacuoles that have been stored for so long. When you're not putting in carbohydrates in your mouth, your body stores them. There's so much storage in your liver, but that's about 1/3 of the amount of storage, because every muscle cell has this storage of glycogen in it as well. And when you have high insulin, you cannot empty those until the insulin goes down. How does the insulin go down? The insulin goes down when the carbohydrates go down. And that's why this diet starts with the recommendation that you get those carbohydrates to 20 or less. That it is a powerful teaching tool. When I look at, I think this graph, let's see if this does this. Yeah, this is the insulin Dr. Boz ratio, where they take blood glucose and divide it by those ketones, and they get a Dr. Boz ratio. When you do that, we want the Dr. Boz ratio to be less than 80 to be a weight loss, but less than 40 when they are trying to work on their immune system. I think this is one of my favorite little slides that talks about if you look at 20 carbohydrates down there, you see those little blue ketones? When they get up to 30 carbohydrates, that starts to increase the insulin. We have lots of fat burning, even in the form of turning that fat back into glucose, which is part of gluconeogenesis. But that only happens when you keep that carbohydrate at less than 20 is what I prefer. If you get less than 30, then you still not so bad. But boy, as soon as you shoot up to 100 carbohydrates or 150 carbohydrates, the insulin is so high that they cannot burn those carbs. A very powerful teaching lesson for all of us. Again, keeping that Dr. Boz ratio nice and low. All right, let's take on a couple more questions and then we'll call it good. I know, right? Yes, that is a huge moment. That is a big, big hands up. So I have a question here about vitamin D. How much vitamin D should be taken on a daily basis? So the actual physician recommendations, I write a prescription that has 10,000 units in a day when they're very low. There's actually some injections of this fat-based molecule that you can do as well. I think that's super expensive, and I would totally biohack it if it was me. I would do the tanning bed thing. I would be on a high-fat diet. But if you're supplementing, I think the one study said even up to 30,000 units had toxicities only when they had other medical health issues with them. I would not recommend that, but 4,000 units is what I would recommend for Lachlyn, as she is trying to replace a 24 on her vitamin D. That 24 is really low, and it's associated with the insulin still being resistant. It's associated with her energy level being low and all of these other preventative measures. I don't think she's going to need to supplement forever. I think the tanning UVB rates UVB rays living here in South Dakota are a great little augment to help her get the numbers up. It's what I did with my own dad, is to send him to the tanning bed 3 times a week at 76 years old. And his numbers are coming up. He actually enjoys it. He feels good. And I think that's the correlation. We've had the sun around since the beginning of man. We haven't had supplemental vitamin D around that long, even though the studies correlate to improving your health, and I recommend that. 4,000 units in the winter would not be a dumb idea. And you can get those over the counter. Okay. All right. Last question, and then we'll call it good. Is this the same for type 2? I have lost 110 pounds, but my glucose is still above 200. Wow. I do intermittent fasting, 18 hours a day, 5 days a week, and less than 20 carbs 7 days a week. And that's Marge from Minnesota. First of all, hi from Minnesota. Hi there, neighbor. Welcome to the dark zone. Hopefully you have UVB rays in your tanning bed too. She says, get your vitamin D checked, Marge. And there's a huge level of stored glucose problems. If you've had that much weight and you've lost that much weight, you have lots of little vacuoles in your muscles and in your liver cells that store sugar. And so when you wake up in the morning, that is why I can't emphasize enough how much power you get when you use this little ratio of glucose divided by ketones. And then you try to hit this, which is get it under 80 every morning, and you will keep losing weight. That is the sugar divided by the ketones. And if you're not able to hit the 80, then I would start doing a little longer fasting. I mean, especially because you're not new to this. If you were in the first few weeks, I would not recommend fasting until somebody's keto adapted. That gets them into that second, third, or fourth week. But if you've lost 100 pounds and you've been at this a while, I would start going to a 36-hour fast, maybe once or twice a week. And what you're trying to do is measure how well did you empty the liver. If you haven't read the book, it really explains why this is so important. The sustainability of a ketogenic diet is about resetting your metabolism. You can do that if you know the rules. And so that's what that book is about. Once again, I successfully navigated this YouTube channel. I'm so proud of myself. I just want to take another moment to say thank you to Lachlyn. Again, her Instagram is Lachlyn, LACHLYN _Nicole. And any words of encouragement that you give her are super helpful for her. She is brave to take this on, and we are super thankful for her giving us plenty of teaching opportunities, right?
You're welcome.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Until next week, girl, you're doing great. Nice job.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. And